There's a room in an old house that no one remembers. A room that isn't supposed to exist. A room that shouldn't be entered because once you do, it remembers you. Emily had always felt a deep emptiness in her heart, a feeling of something missing, something she could never quite explain. Growing up, she had spent her childhood in a quiet, eerie house in Maine, raised by her grandmother after her parents' sudden death. Though she barely remembered them, their absence haunted her every day, like an unfinished song that lingered in her soul. Now, at 27, she was back in that house after her grandmother's passing. The air inside smelled of old wood and forgotten memories. She ran her fingers along the dusty walls, tracing the childhood she barely recalled. But something felt off. The house had 5 rooms, she was sure of it, but the old floor plan in the attic said 6, a room she had never seen. Her heart pounded as she walked through the narrow hallway, stopping where the hidden room should have been. The wallpaper looked different here, slightly torn at the edges, revealing something beneath. Trembling, she pulled at the old paper, and a door appeared. An old wooden door with a rusted iron handle. She had never seen it before. How was that possible? She hesitated, a strange fear creeping into her bones. And then, against all reason, she turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust motes swirled in the air, illuminated by the dim light of a single candle sitting on a wooden desk. A small bed stood against the wall, its sheets still perfectly arranged as if waiting for someone to return. A child's toys lay scattered on the floor, and then she saw it, a mirror. But it wasn't just a mirror. It was wrong. Her reflection didn't move. Emily's breath hitched. Her reflection just stood there, staring at her. And then it smiled. A cold, bony hand touched her shoulder. She gasped and spun around, but no one was there. She turned back to the mirror. Her reflection was gone. A whisper slithered through the room. "You found me." The door slammed shut behind her. Emily banged on the door, panic clawing at her throat. The walls felt closer, suffocating. Then she noticed something in the corner, a photograph. She picked it up with shaking hands. It was old, its edges curling with age. A family portrait, a man, a woman, and a little girl. Emily's breath caught. The girl looked exactly like her. And then she saw the writing at the bottom. Emily, age 5. The forgotten one. Tears streamed down her face. This couldn't be real. She didn't remember this. She had no memory of this room, of these people. But something deep inside her, something buried, did. A flood of images crashed into her mind. Laughter, shadows, a woman screaming, a child crying, hands grabbing, a door slamming, a forgotten child. She staggered back, clutching her chest. Was this room hers? A sharp knock echoed through the room. Not from the door, from inside the mirror. Emily turned, her breath coming in short gasps. The mirror wasn't reflecting the room anymore. It showed something else. A dark, endless corridor. And then footsteps. A figure emerged, slowly walking toward the glass. It was a girl who looked exactly like Emily. Her twin, a ghost, a memory. The girl stopped inches from the glass. "You were never supposed to leave." Emily stumbled back, her legs shaking. The girl in the mirror raised her hands and pressed them against the glass. The glass began to crack. The room trembled, the walls vibrating as if something inside them was waking up. Emily screamed as the mirror shattered, and the girl stepped out. She wasn't a reflection. She was real, and she was coming for her. Emily tried to run, but the door had vanished. The girl's expression was unreadable, her dark eyes locking onto Emily's. "You left me here." Emily shook her head, unable to understand. "Now you have to take my place." The room started to darken, shadows creeping up the walls like ink spreading through water. Emily's lungs burned as the air grew heavier. Then she saw it, the reflection of the room in the shards of broken glass. It wasn't empty anymore. There were dozens of children. Their hollow eyes stared at her, their lips forming soundless words. and behind them, a towering figure began to emerge. Something ancient, something waiting. The girl smiled. "You open the door, Emily. Now you can never leave." The lights flickered. The room swallowed her whole. The door was gone. The room was shrinking. The air was thick with whispers. Emily was trapped in a place that should not exist, inside a forgotten room with a girl who looked exactly like her. But she was not her. She was something else. And she was not alone. Emily's body shook as she pressed herself against the wall, her mind a blur of terror and confusion. The girl, her mirror image, stood in front of her, head slightly tilted, watching. "You forgot me," the girl whispered. Emily's heart ached. This wasn't just fear, this was something deeper. A wound she had never known she carried, a memory she couldn't reach. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she looked into the girl's dark, sorrowful eyes. A painful recognition stirred in her chest. Who was she? "Please," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't understand." The girl's lips quivered. "Neither did I. When you left me here." The walls trembled, the whispers growing louder. The shadows in the corners stretched and writhed as if alive. Then the children appeared. They crawled out of the darkness, pale, silent, watching. Their hollow eyes glowed dimly in the flickering candlelight. There were so many of them. Emily choked on a scream. Some were missing fingers. Some had sunken faces, their skin peeling away. Others had their mouths sewn shut, black stitches crisscrossing their lips. And then they moved. A boy stepped forward, his bare feet silent against the wooden floor. His body was thin, frail, like he hadn't eaten in years. "She left us," he said, pointing at Emily. His voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through her like a knife. "She forgot us." Emily shook her head wildly. "I don't know you. I swear, I don't." The girl grabbed Emily's wrist. Her grip was ice cold. "But we know you." The shadows exploded. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed her. Emily was falling. The room had vanished. The floor was gone. Cold wind howled past her ears, tearing at her skin, dragging her downward into endless black. Then impact. She landed hard on her knees. Her hands touched something soft. Grass. She looked up, her breath hitching. She was outside, but not in the real world. She stood in a graveyard, bathed in eerie, bluish moonlight. The tombstones stretched into the distance, crooked and crumbling with age. Emily Carter, her own name. She collapsed onto the dirt, her fingers shaking as she traced the letters. No, this wasn't possible. She was alive. She was here. How could she be buried? Tears burned her eyes as she dug into the dirt with her bare hands, clawing at the earth as if she could undo the horror in front of her. Then, a hand broke through the soil. Tiny, pale hand. Emily screamed. A child was crawling out of her grave. Emily scrambled back, watching in horror as the child emerged from the dirt. A little girl, no older than 5, covered in dust and decay. Her dress was torn, her dark hair matted. She lifted her head. It was Emily, a much younger version of herself. Emily's entire body went numb. The little girl looked up with tear-filled eyes, her lips trembling. "You buried me," she whispered. Emily's vision blurred. 1,000 emotions crashed into her. Grief, terror, guilt. I don't remember," she choked. The child stepped forward, her tiny hands reaching out. "You have to remember." The wind howled. The ground beneath them split open. Emily tried to move, but her body wouldn't obey. She could only watch as the earth tore apart, revealing something beneath the graveyard. A second world, dark and endless. A whisper slithered through the wind. "She's waking up." The shadows shifted. A monstrous shape began to rise from the abyss. Emily's younger self turned toward it. "You forgot me once." She looked back at Emily, her eyes dark as the void. "Don't forget me again." The world collapsed. Emily woke up screaming. She was back in the forgotten room. The mirror was whole again, reflecting the dark, empty space around her. The girl, her double, was gone. But something had changed. Her hands were covered in dirt. The whispers had stopped. And then she noticed it. The mirror wasn't showing her reflection anymore. It was showing a door she had never seen before, a door with her name carved into it. The knob twisted. Something was coming through.